Will the third speaker
Okay, we are live now. You can start. Thank you so much.
Good afternoon and welcome to the ICCD webinar entitled Food Security Challenges and Potential Solutions. I am Suhad Abu Zaki, a development economist and research consultant based in Lebanon, and I'm honored to be the moderator in today's session. Food security is a vital issue impacting millions globally, with the world population projected to reach 9.7 billion by 2050, and the increasing challenges of of climate change and conflicts around the world. Ensuring the availability of and the access to sufficient, safe, and nutritious food is more crucial than ever. Today, we are fortunate enough to be joined by a distinguished panel of international experts with diversified backgrounds who will be sharing their insights and experiences on the current state of food security, the key challenges facing its 4 pillars, and the possible solution that can be implemented to create a more secure and more resilient food systems. We encourage you to actively participate by sharing your question and your perspective in the chat box, and we will hopefully be answering the questions at the end of the webinar. And without further ado, I'll be introducing the speakers for today. First, we have Mr. Ahmed Mukhtar. Mr. Ahmed is a senior economist leading the strategy and the policy team at the Regional Office of the Food and Agriculture Organization for the Near East and North Africa, based in Cairo, Egypt. Mr. Mukhtar has an educational background in economics and public policy and over 20 years of experience working on national and international assignments in areas of international economics, trade policy, agriculture economics, public health, bilateral and regional trade issues. Mr. Mukhtar has also previously worked at the FAO office in Geneva, at the UNDP, and served with the permanent mission of Pakistan to the WTO. We also have Dr. Hussein Hassan. Dr. Hussein is the Director of Academic Compliance at the Provost Office at the Lebanese American University, LAU, and he's also a Professor of Science and Technology there, Food Science and Technology there, sorry. He received his BS and MS in Food Technology from the American University of Beirut, AUB, and his PhD in food process engineering from McGill University, Canada. Dr. Hassan's research interest revolves around areas such as food safety, food toxicology, food processing, and food waste. He published more than 65 articles in top-notch academic journal and served as a senior food safety expert and food processing expert and consultant with local and international entities such as UN agencies and USAID. And we will hopefully have with us Mr. Gadebo Odularo. Mr. Gadebo is a visionary leader and a compassionate humanitarian committed to fighting and eradicating hunger and food insecurity. With a background in economics of community development and a deep passion for social justice, Mr. Gadebo has been leading the No Hunger Bank in Nigeria as the president and the CEO, and implemented several innovative programs such as routine community breakfast, school feeding programs, the Smart Meta Agro Hub, and other programs which are aimed to support underserved population suffering from food and nutrition insecurity, and aim to improve their access to healthy and culturally appropriate food. So thank you all for joining us, and I look forward for a fruitful and an engaging discussion. So welcome. I will start my questions with Mr. Ahmed, if possible, since it's better before delving into the pillars of the food security, it's good to introduce the concept to our participants and to explain why is it a source of concern now, and which countries or which areas are more prone to food insecurity at the moment.
Okay, thank you very much, Ms. Suhad. Can you hear me properly?
Yes, definitely.
Okay. Thanks a lot. So thank you. I have, by the way, a presentation developed for this subject because colleagues at the chamber told that, if I can cover the role of FAO or the international organizations, but I think I would prefer the question that you said in general and to have an interactive discussion, and we can use the slides when needed.
Actually, I'll be asking like consecutive questions. Like once we answer the first part, I'll be asking other parts to cover other questions or other areas that are important to cover, and same for other speakers as well.
That's absolutely fine, and thanks for that. So it is better to have the interactive discussion. Okay, now food security, as we say in general, is when you have sufficient, and we say healthy diet available for everyone at any given point in time. And that is, as you know, the SDG, the Sustainable Development Goal 2 as well, that by 2030, we should have zero hunger. That is the main goal. Now, unfortunately, situation is not going well. From 2015, when the SDG started, up to 2020, probably things were relatively improving globally. But since then, it has been on decline. There are plenty of factors for that. There are factors of we call it 4 C's, the climate change to start with, the consumption patterns and the consumption demand and the volumes, the conflicts, more importantly in our Arab region, that is very serious issue. And then, the consumption patterns as well, because a lot of countries need more processed or let's say higher end of the food, and the other countries do not. The world cannot supply all of those things. Now, all of these factors have led us to see a situation where we have been seeing an increase in the number of hungry people. Now, as per different estimates, it's between 730 to 850 million people across the globe that are still, categorized as hungry, or that do not have access to the sufficient food. A factor, let's say, coupled with that is that the cost of a healthy diet, or let's say a good diet, is also quite significant. Sorry, can you hear me? Because there was a bit of pause. I hope that I'm online. Okay.
Yes, we can.
All right. So the cost of healthy diet is also a significant point of concern, because on average, it is about $3.5 per day per person. Now, how many people in the world can actually afford that? So in fact, more than 3 billion people in the world cannot afford a healthy diet because of the income levels. And that is averages, and you can see the variety in that. Now, in addition to that one, there is a huge food loss and waste. You all know the overall broad figure that 1/3 of the food is either lost or wasted at the consumption level. So in fact, if there is no food loss and waste, we can feed every hungry people 1.8 times. So that is also a fact. Now, what are the major factors? As I said, the climate change, conflicts, and these type of things. But the food, as at this point in time, the 4 pillars that you mentioned, so availability is probably there. I think if we look at the global level, access is the main issue. Whether you have the access to that due to your internal distribution systems, your social and economic systems. And more importantly, access is hindered not only by the income levels, but by the level of peace and security in a country as well, and by the level of the overall social and income and wealth and social inequality. So those are the important factors that are hindering. Now, ideally speaking, all of the countries should ensure, because this is more like very basics of the basics and the fundamental, that government should ensure that there is sufficient food available for everyone. But why can we not ensure that? What stops us? And if I can say to our region, the Arab region, or let's say OIC region at a broad level, what's wrong? Because we subsidize quite a lot, many of our social security programs and others. There are certain, I think, fundamental flaws where we do not look the food security from a holistic perspective. We either resort towards the self-sufficiency, that we should produce everything, which is not an economically or even naturally a feasible factor because of our natural endowments or the agricultural endowments. And the second part is that even if we have the sufficient availability, as I said, we do not have the systems to ensure a smooth and sustainable access to the food. Rather than that, oftentimes we have seen that you resort to the ration schemes or, these type of food distribution, which is not a solution. I mean, it's a very temporary, and that is why we do not solve these food security issues for a very long time. The very last factor is that, particularly in OIC or Arab region, we do not harness the benefit of trade, or let's say cooperating with each other in terms of the countries. There are countries in our region that can feed us feasibly if there is a bit of deployment of the investment and technology, because they do have the natural endowments, but the other countries actually go far, far to the markets like Australia, Argentina, Black Sea, and these type of markets rather than next door. So these are the factors that are actually hindering us. And of course, I mean, very recently, the conflicts in our region, Sudan, Palestine, Iraq, and Syria were just recent ones. And, Yemen is all still there. So these are the factors that are basically stopping us to look for something that we can say that we are relatively food secure. So I'll stop here and then we can have a discussion afterwards. Thank you.
I'm actually glad that you started with pointing that availability is not the major concern, because every single discussion about food security starts with the sentence, we have a growing population and we need to feed the growing population, and this is why we need to increase production and improve productivity. So why is this focus on availability and increasing production rather than focusing more on access?
I think, I mean, this is what they call the knee-jerk policy reaction, what sells quickly, and that is the easy way out. People do not recognize the benefit of the ease of the policies that are there to ensure the availability of the food. I mean, you can either produce or you can import, and the markets are relatively open. But excess is a difficult part, and in excess, as I said, there is a design flaw. There is a policy design flaw. It is not important to give the bag of a food to someone who does not have that. I mean, it's a very known fact that it is better that you introduce a system where this person has an earning capacity to access the food. And then in the markets, we have the distribution systems. And oftentimes, by the way, there are distribution systems as well, which are not efficient in case of food, because food has to have a certain type of supply chain and a value chain. And due to some of the transportation and economically unfeasible type of situations, people do not bother about that. But it is only when we understand the importance that this is a fundamental right. For example, in Japan and Switzerland, the transport and internet is assured to each and every household, even if there is one house on the mountain. They have to ensure that. It doesn't matter whether it's economic feasibility or not. Why can we not enshrine that as a fundamental right and make an effort that even if it does not make an economic sense, it is a fundamental right that we have to ensure. So once we adjust these sustainable solutions and the structural flaws, then I think we can probably easily ensure the access to the food as well. Because if it is available, ideally speaking, there should be an access as well. I mean, what stops us from ensuring the access?
Mr. Gadibo, to continue the idea, I'm hoping that I'm pronouncing the name right. I'm not sure. Okay, great. So to continue the idea of Mr. Ahmad Mukhtar, he pointed that access is the issue and temporary solutions are not the answer. However, based on your experience, to what extent do you think that policies and programs aimed at improving access, such as food stamps, community food banks, and other programs, can actually help vulnerable population, and to what extent? And if you can please give us examples from your experience, since you have a wealth of experience in this field.
Yeah, okay. Thank you. Thank you, Suhad, and apologies for coming behind schedule. And really excited to meet my other colleagues, Ahmad, Hussein, as well as many thanks to the in this webinar. So I agree with some of the comments provided by Ahmad regarding the problem of access. And that's why we are coming with a new approach. Not really new at the global level, but it's an emerging approach at the African level, where we serve our beneficiaries, and that's the food banking model. And if what uniquely important and critical in this era especially in the post-COVID era, is the problem that despite the fact that there is a problem of accessibility, which further ameliorates the problem in malnutrition, you still realize that there's still increasing level of food waste. Food waste and food loss is still crazily high. If you appeal to the data from the FAO, we're still wasting food, whether post-harvest losses, especially in the global south and in Africa, or whether even food in our homes, they are still being wasted. So it's crazy to think around it that okay, there are increasing number of hungry people. Out of the 10 in Africa, but still, this Africa still is got the capacity and the enabling natural environment to produce so much and feed the world, but it's not doing that. So that
Sorry, your voice
the
is cutting a
availability.
little bit.
Yeah, hello, is it better now? Hello.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. So I say that also ties on to the production element of it, or availability, because we've got a continent that has got the enabling environment to produce, but is not producing. At the same time, too, this continent is still experiencing one of the highest post-harvest losses. From our experiences, we've seen that what our role as a food bank is not just to get food and vulnerable members of the community in order to enhance access at the last mile. But we realize that there is really a critical problem at the food harvest getting wasted, and what our role is really crying for is how to come in and help to recover and rescue food at that level, and in order to make it more accessible. Now, if you say accessible to even give it to them like a food stamp, at a level we expect them to become more empowered and independent and be able to afford it, so that it will help them to become independent and also contribute to food security and nutritional security in the communities that we target. So I will stop there, and maybe further questions will be
So basically what you're suggesting that this program has to provide like more an end-to-end support, yani covering different aspects, not just access, right?
What I'm saying is that despite the fact that there is a problem of access, as we loss and food waste. So as a food bank, we are not just interested in the food or getting it from the government reserve and giving it to the most vulnerable, but we are interested in how do we think of the problem of food waste and food loss. How do we reduce those huge post-harvest losses, especially for vegetables, fruits, tomatoes this season now, or even plugging the value chain to ensure that there is perishable foods. They're still being wasted and being wasted every time. So the question that begs for is that the role of increasing technological revolution that we're experiencing now, how does it help us to plug or reduce that problem access along the value chain?
Okay. In your biography, it's mentioned that you work to ensure access to food and to culturally appropriate food. So to what extent culture actually affect food security at the level of the household or the community level?
Absolutely, yeah, thank you. So we don't just make we also look at the geographical context where we find our beneficiaries. Most of our beneficiaries as Nonga Food Bank, they are internally displaced people. They are homeless people who have migrated from one community within the northern part of the country and coming to the capital, which is in the middle part of the country, the Federal Capital Territory. So they're migrating as displaced people because of man-made as well as natural related disasters, climate change, but at the same time, as you know, in the northern part of the country, which is prone to conflict and also herdsmen like cow destroying farmlands and families migrating and coming to a safer area where government is really available. So what we do is to look at we don't just say, okay, this is the food that's available and we give it to them. No, we want to understand who they are. We want to understand where they come from. We want to understand which tribe or ethnic group they come from and which food really suits that ethnic group. So that's where the culturally appropriated food comes in. And we now, because we collect data about them, their profile, the family makeup, the reasons why they are migrating, the reason why they become homeless. We have our staff that document that in our database, and we use that database to inform the type or the customized approach in food package that we provide to them. So that's the cultural, ethnically relevant food packages that we provide that make it culturally appropriate.
Thank you. I'll move to Dr. Hussein. Dr. Hussein, when we talk about food safety, which basically falls under the utilization pillar of food security, most people think of food safety at the consumption level. However, the literature suggests that food safety is a concern in almost every part of the food system. So can you please explain this idea more, and what are the primary food safety concerns that threaten food security?
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you again for having me. So when we discuss food safety, it's imperative to cover it from farm to fork. So food safety starts at the agricultural level. So that's why we have the good agricultural practices. If the farmer and concerned stakeholders do not implement the good agricultural practices, we may have contaminants that do not get destroyed during future processing. One example, if we don't store the cereals properly, we will have mold growth and subsequent mycotoxin production. Mycotoxins are heat stable, so later on, even if I will make bread out of the wheat, the mycotoxins will stay there and they bioaccumulate in our body, resulting in significant consequences, including increasing the risk of cancer. So it all starts from the farming, from the agriculture, and it goes up in the chain until we reach the consumption. So for example, if I, as a customer, buy milk from the supermarkets, even if I store the milk properly at home, if the milk was not produced properly, transported properly, stored properly in the retail market, irrespective of how good I am when it comes to preserving milk in my place, the milk will not be safe. And there is a nice quote that says, if not safe, it's not food. So food should be safe. And the safety involves different stakeholders all the way from farm to fork. And any gaps or any non-conformities in between will ultimately affect both the safety and quality of the end product.
And basically, what are the primary causes of what are the primary causes of food loss and waste, since we are talking about what we're losing throughout the value chain? What are the main causes at different stages of the supply chain?
Okay, so as Mr. Mukhtar said before, when we talk about food loss, it's at the production stage. However, food waste is at the consumption stage. So, for example, we're talking about food waste in households, in hospitality, and in retail markets. Now, the reasons for food loss are completely different from that of food waste. So food loss is caused by poor agricultural practices, poor storage facilities, poor transportation practices, and this is actually a problem in the developing countries. Whereas when we talk about food waste, it's more about the behaviors and the attitudes and practices by the customer themselves. So, for example, in the Arab region, we are famous for our hospitality. So, in our culture, it's important to offer too many items to our guests. During Ramadan, for example, or during the holidays, it's a sign of generosity to overproduce. And this overproduction results in food waste unless we reach out to a food bank like the case of Mr. Odularu. So it's more of a cultural thing. But on top of the culture, we do have some other parameters. For example, in countries like Lebanon, like Egypt, we have power cuts. And the power cuts will affect the storage in the fridge, resulting in wasting the food. However, in general, the food loss is a problem in developing countries, whereas food waste is a problem in both developing and developed countries. Together, they consist around 1/3 of the food that we make. And actually, in addition to what Mr. Ahmed said about availability, we have in the world around 1 billion hungry people, whereas the food that we lost or waste is enough to feed 3 billion people. So actually the hunger issue in the world can be resolved by addressing food loss and food waste. So in other words, as you, Ms. Suhad, said as well, we always focus on the availability of food, on the importance of increasing the production. Actually, it's not an issue of production, it's an issue of loss and waste. So if everyone tackles the issue of food loss and waste properly, we really don't need to worry about increasing the food production, because tackling this issue can remove the hunger issue from the world easily. And that's why, for example, in the SDGs and the Sustainable Development Goals, we have 12.3, Sustainable Development Goal 12.3, which highlights the importance of halving the food loss and halving the food waste and reducing food loss as much as possible before 2030, and 2030 is around the corner. So we all know that food loss and waste is a major issue, but unfortunately, it's not getting the needed attention and intervention to achieve SDG 12.3.
Thank you. Mr. Ahmed, it's obvious that food security is multi-layered, and given that it's multi-layered, it needs like different agents or different components to work together to improve food security. Now, how do trade policies and international relations influence food security at both the global and the regional level? And what is the role of the international organizations such as FAO and other organizations in promoting or reducing food insecurity?
Okay, thank you very much. Interesting question. Now, trade is often a little bit, let's say, misunderstood subject when it comes to food security. But let me give you some of the facts. Overall, people say that it is between, again, different estimates, but between 12 to 17% of the total value of production of food is traded. Okay. Now, one could say that it is almost just 1/10 of the food that is traded globally, and rest is locally produced and consumed. Fine. But what is traded? Do we know? It is cereals, most importantly. And cereals are the real, component of ensuring food security for many of the countries. The second fact to that is that it could be only in theoretical or let's say realistic terms, 17 countries in the world that can be self-sufficient in food. All others need imports. In fact, all of the countries in the world, each and every country and territory import one way or the other, or one thing or the other. So that is the importance. It is not this 12 to 17% of the number, but you have to see need. Of course, there are many reasons for that. Now, coming to the Arab region, that imports, more than 63% of its caloric intake comes from the imported food, because we have, limitations on the production. Africa, the caloric intake in sub-Saharan Africa is even more than 70% that comes from imported food. So that is the importance of the trade. But we misunderstand and we misuse, or let's say, misuse the potential of the trade in our food security policies. For example, in many of the countries, despite having this dependence on trade or imports of foods, you would see that the tariffs or the customs duties and the non-tariff barriers are extremely high. And that, one would not understand why. What's the reason for that? There are countries, who are really big cereal importers, and they can never be self-sufficient due to the resource endowments and the land and so on and so forth. Still, you would see that, the duties are on average 50% applied tariffs. That is one. And secondly, the trade facilitation as well. And a large part of that is what Dr. Hussain also said. Most of the food loss that happens is in the post-harvest, systems, but in the supply chains as well. There are hundreds of containers every day, including in our region, that go as a food loss because of the less swift or lazy, let's say, processing at the customs or the borders. And, then they're not edible afterwards. So that is why we need to, and that is why, by the way, there is a special mention in the trade facilitation agreement of the WTO on the perishable goods. There was special clauses, but the application is a bit less of that one. Now, we did a report very recently in 2016, FAO did a report on the role of trade for global food security. And then at the regional level, at our NENA regional level, we did it in 2022. If you read our flagship report, the State of Food Security and Nutrition, it extends quite a lot of discussion at the country level analysis on how we can harness trade or potential of trade for ensuring food security. So I would not go into the details, but there are loads and loads of examples and case studies where we have to resort to the trade. That's a given thing. But one last and most important point is that our intra-regional trade is extremely low within the NENA region or the OIC countries. And we are working on that. We recently developed an analytical tool that is called NENA Regional Trade Map, where we have actually calculated the 19 member countries in our region, FAO's regional office, where we calculated that how much is untapped potential for exports or imports between these countries. For example, how much Egypt can export citrus to Saudi Arabia with the actual numbers. It's a modeling process that we deployed, and there's a huge potential. For example, between Saudi Arabia and Egypt, there is $600 million untapped potential of trade of food and agriculture items. So is the case with the others. So we just need to recognize those facts and importance. And all of the world is, as you know, shortening the supply chains from a private sector perspective. But food is, unfortunately, as I mentioned in my previous intervention as well, that people are, I don't know why they easily think that if I cannot buy from Australia, I can buy from Argentina. But why don't you buy from Sudan, who is just next door, or Morocco? That is available as well. Then people would say, no, it is the quality issue and the others. Fine, there's a system for that. You can ask the suppliers to have specific seeds or certain quality, and they will do that. I mean, every country went through that, cycle and the process to upgrade the value chains. So it is just that we should try to look next door, look closer, and then I'm sure, there will be much better. I'm not saying that our region can really, or Sudan can feed whole of the region, but Sudan can, by the way, take a lot of burden. And I've gave the example because Sudan is one of the countries that still has a huge potential, huge, water and other resources, but not being utilized. So that is why, I mean, for us, I think trade is probably one of the most important component with a potential that is still hugely underutilized. Thank you.
Thank you for such an important remark on collaboration or interregional collaboration. I will go back to the consumption level with Mr. Gadebo. Since you work closely with households and displaced people or people affected by natural disasters and so, as you said, to what extent do you think that households are or can accept changing their behavior or consumption patterns? Because we just discussed that consumption patterns are major factors in impacting, let's say, food security at the household level and even at a bigger level. So how can we promote sustainable consumption practices, and are people receptive? Are they flexible to change their consumption and accept choosing a different food, or they do it out of lack of choices, for example?
Yeah, thank you. So thank you for that question, Suad. And if you permit me, I'll piggyback on Ahmad's contribution with regard to trade. And trade, international cooperation, trade facilitation, procurement issues, and that's where food banking as a model comes in. And we've got there are different regional or international food banks, but I would speak for the Global Food Banking Network, which is headquarters in Chicago, the US, which we collaborate with, which also certifies what we do, and also not just certifying us and strengthening our capacities to be able to serve as an hunger relief platform or organization, but also helping us to use trade and procurement as an instrument to access resources, food, in order to provide, especially in disaster-related situations, and maybe you are not able to mobilize the food within your community or within your country. Then you need to appeal to international organizations or international businesses to come to the aid of such a country. So that component. So enhancing access, especially to the most vulnerable population, is really very critical, and I think we need to put it into context as well. So that's a with respect to households and how they're responding to
your voice is cutting again.
Okay, so yeah, is it better now?
Yes. Okay,
so households that are affected by disasters and which also situations. So in most cases, they are able to adapt to what we provide to them in terms of the boxes, food, whether it's cereal. Mostly we provide cereals like millets, sometimes rice, because we also don't want to just provide any food. They need to be food secure. We also think along the line of nutritional security, because food security is a means to nutritional security. So we put that into context and not just say, okay, we're providing them with just carbohydrates, but we try to make it like a balance. They can prepare for their family, and we sustain them for we provide it to them. And like I said earlier on, that we try as much as possible to operate food for them. But if we don't have that, we still make sure that the food they will accept in most cases. So they are not they are not, they do not like refuse what we provide to them because they're in critical need. They accept them as they are. However, one other also need to look at that is helping to reduce the food waste. Restaurants or cuisines is the cooking practice where in the traditionally restaurants would when you need it, then maybe it's already available, they just warm it for you. But nowadays, when we visit the restaurants that we collaborate with as corporate organizations, they don't just have the food ready for you. When you come, that's when they prepare it. So it's a cooking practice that helps to reduce waste. So when we see that among the restaurants, we encourage it and we tell them that, oh, that's what we also want to encourage as a food bank, reduce waste, and at the same time become more sustainable in how we manage the resources that will help to shape the food systems across our communities.
And are you observing like a long-term change in behavior or in practices?
Yeah, we collaborate with, we experiencing a big change in behavior. I told you, we also have what we call grocery platforms, grocery delivery platforms. So like Jumia, like Glovo. So what they do is to serve as a one-stop platform where all restaurants are subscribers to that platform. So whenever any of the restaurants clients or customers need food, they get it through Glovo, and once, because Glovo or Jumia is a delivery app, an application, technology application. So it also helps to reduce food waste because any food that is supposed to go into waste is not taken back to the restaurants, all in the interest of food safety. Just like Dr. Azan said, the food is already contaminated along the way. So it goes to the delivery app, like Glovo or Jumia, and food finds its way to the food bank. So we are one of the beneficiaries of such emerging technology, the role of delivery apps in reducing food waste along the food value chain. So we do that. We've been collaborating with such delivery apps for the past 5 years, and it's really been very helpful in providing food items and meals that we make available to our beneficiaries, and it's also helping to plug and reduce food waste from that level as well.
Thank you. Mr. Hassan, what can be done at the local and international level to minimize food waste and to ensure that food surplus is being redirected to those in need? Mr. Gadibou just gave us some of the examples they have implemented. What could be other examples?
Okay, so according to studies, awareness is the key. It all starts with awareness because, as I said before, food waste is more of a behavioral, cultural thing. Do you want me to give some tips on the personal level? Okay.
Why not?
So for instance, many studies stressed on the fact that no one should go and buy food when they are hungry. Because when you are hungry, you tend to buy items that you don't actually need. So you end up having too many items in your kitchen. By the time you want to use them, they would be expired. So that's why it's important to write a list of items we need before going to the supermarket. It's very important to practice what we call first expired, first out. So from time to another, let's say once a month, we check what we have. And in case any item is expiring soon, we put it at the front so that we consume it before it gets expired. It's very important to follow recipes because when we follow recipe, the chance of failure is less. Many people like to improvise, to make recipes on their own. And in many cases, the end product is not up to the expectations, so we waste it. That's why we have to follow recipes and to look at the yield of each recipe. So for example, if I need to prepare food for 2 people, and the recipe that I get online or from the cookbook yields 10 portions, I need to divide all the ingredients by 3, let's say. In other words, it's important to plan what we prepare. Also, it's important to think before wasting any product. For example, in case I have a low quality tomato in the fridge, instead of wasting it, I can simply squeeze it and drink its juice because the juice would have exactly the same nutritional benefits as if it comes from a top quality and top grade tomato. So it's important to always think about what we waste. Also, it's important to reach out to charity organizations like food banks. Anytime we have any special occasion, a birthday, an iftar during Ramadan, and we expect to have a surplus of food, it's important to make sure that we pack the surplus in a clean, safe way and donate this extra food to a food bank, or it could be to needy family that we know of surrounding us, like neighbors and so on. And I would say it's very important to always consider food waste as we say in Arabic, hadr al-na'ma. Food is a blessing, and many people don't have it. So when we waste food, we're not only harming our pockets, we're harming the environment because food waste has environmental, economic ramifications. When we waste an apple, we're actually wasting water, wasting pesticides, wasting efforts of the farmer. So the awareness is very important. And actually, we had one recent study that we published in the Journal of Cleaner Production, which is a top journal, about the importance of awareness. So when people get aware about food waste and its ramifications, it turned out that their practices got improved significantly. So that's why what we're doing now with you now, the civil society, the NGOs, the government should all collaborate in raising awareness because, again, it all starts with awareness.
Sure. Mr. Ahmed, at a more macro level, what can be done to reduce food loss and waste? So both food loss and waste. And what is the role of technology, or to what extent technology and data analytics can help in this domain?
Sure, thank you. I'll take from what Dr. Hassan said. At the broad level, by the way, we do have, as FAO, we have the voluntary guidelines on reducing food loss and waste. And there is a technical platform as well, that is a knowledge exchange platform that you can check on our regional office website and FAO's global website as well. But let's say there are some issues at the supply chain level that we need to take care of. And analytics, as you mentioned, Dr. Saad, is quite important over here, so that we basically manage the pilferages or the loss issues to start with. As I said, there are loads and loads of losses at the borders, by the way, just for the delays and improper handling. So we have to see that. Then through the advanced analytics, we can also see that where we have some of, let's say, the food safety concerns or rejections due to, pest and residues and, all of these type of issues. And how can we manage that, if we have a good anticipatory action taken into that one. Then at the broad level, of course, consumer awareness is also broad, that Dr. Hussain said, but, unfortunately, if you look at the human history or the evolution of the economic so-called independence or empowerment, as humans, we tend to, let's say, extend our, as we say in Arabic, ikhtiyar, or our power, to basically show that, I can afford. That somehow it's a transitionary cycle that, comes in all societies as a generation. And I think our region is going through that transition. So probably maybe in a couple of generations, we would be over that. It's a very natural cycle. In some parts of the world, they are already over with it. So, and then the other policies, by the way, most importantly, again, ignored one, is when the food comes to the distribution cycles, points, most importantly, the retail point, how do we manage with the expired food? Now, we know that in the large retail stores, large chains, there is a huge food that gets expired and thrown away. First and foremost, we can anticipate through the advanced analytics that how can we manage that food. For example, if from the store they cannot sell very close to the expiry date, there could be alternative uses for that. And we have to see what are the alternative uses for it. And secondly, in France, they did an experiment recently that they said, okay, X is the expiry date. Let us see what happens 2 days plus X day. And in fact, nothing happened. Of course, I mean, the scientists would probably disagree, but a lot of times we are extra cautious. And the food companies and retailers are extra cautious, and probably for a good reason, they have to be extra cautious. But at the broad level, there might be some intermediaries. Let's say some of the food banks can intervene into that. I mean, food banks are mostly, as you know, at the consumption or the consumer level, but they can work a lot at the retail level to anticipate these type of issues and try to find the alternative use. And then, of course, government can support. The third thing could be that, this is a very innovative thing, not experimented anywhere, but we floated an idea last year, is that you can probably, and of course, to a certain extent, the retail outlets do that. For example, anything, milk or others closer to the expiry date always is on the sale, that is an easy part. But why does the government not do that, encourage that? That anything that is closer to that, we will subsidize you in a way, or something like that, that we take out immediately, from all of the retail stores at a certain price and have a distribution system, that distributes it quickly. So it basically invests that so-called subsidy in buying that and even giving free, because that is a better social protection or social security system than giving the coupons for the food and others. But again, it has certain scale limitation. This will not solve all of that, but these type of innovative solutions, but more importantly, in this case, it has to be public-private partnerships and based on the very advanced trends and analytics, that is really helpful. But as I said, at a much broader and higher level, we do have guidelines on the food loss and waste, and there are some good practices. For example, NEMA initiative in UAE is a good example to see, where the Emirates Foundation has agreed upon with some voluntary code of conduct with the restaurants and food outlets in Emirates to see that, how they are managing with all of these food waste and so on and so forth. So I'll stop here because I think we are already over time. Thank you.
Yes. So as a last question for all the speakers, Mr. Ahmad already mentioned few points that need to be addressed to solve food waste and food loss in general. What could be the priorities, or what should be the priorities for government to improve, let's say, food security and to be ahead in terms of fighting hunger and supporting vulnerable communities? So what are the, let's say, the first or two priorities that each government should be setting in order to improve food security? So I'm gonna ask each one of you, please, to give a final opinion on that before we take a few questions. So we can start with Dr. Hussain, if you want.
So, sorry, because I had some connection issues. So your question was about the role
So-
of governments?
Yes, we already covered different aspects of food security. We started talking about food availability, production, then we talked about access, food utilization, speaking of consumption patterns and food waste and loss and food safety. So now what I'm trying I'm trying to wrap up the webinar with like final opinion on what should be the priorities or what should be the government priorities to promote food security in their countries.
Okay, so let me talk about food waste in particular being my area of expertise. For example, in countries like Lebanon, there are laws. For example, in Lebanon in 2020, we got a law by the parliament that gives incentives to supermarkets that have agreements with charity organizations in terms of donating the safe food at the end of the day instead of wasting it. However, this law hasn't been implemented yet. So the laws are very important, but also we're talking about not only developing or setting them, but also implementing them, because the key issue in this part of the world is not in the laws themselves, but in implementing them. It's very important to set baselines. Actually, in the Arab world, only Saudi Arabia and the United Arab Emirates have baselines for food waste. And when we say baseline, we're talking about quantifying and characterizing food waste in order to see the magnitude of the problem and design effective interventions. Unfortunately, in the Arab region, only 2 countries out of maybe 20 have done this exercise. So support to develop baselines is very important, and baselines can be developed in collaboration between the government and academic institutions. For example, in Lebanon, we do research about food waste. We publish it in top journals, but this is not enough, because unless we have like the umbrella, the government taking a part of it, our studies will simply articles and journals instead of being like part of a national strategy to reach a baseline. I would say the government should arrange awareness campaigns. For example, in Lebanon, our institution, the Lebanese American University, partnered with the Ministry of Economy and Trade. We organized an inter-university competition to design a poster for increasing awareness on food loss and waste. And this competition was very effective because it engaged university students in food waste. And the winning poster was shared on billboards and on different social media outlets. So the government cannot find a solution for food waste alone. Food waste requires the collaboration and synergy between different stakeholders. And I think what I just mentioned can be a good starting point to reduce food waste significantly.
Thank you. Mr. Gadibo, your opinion on the priorities?
Yeah.
We're not able to hear you.
The role of the government and organized private sector cannot be overemphasized. So that's a collaborative intervention where all the necessary ministries or government agencies and the private sector come together would be helpful, because I could remember some of the most impactful achievements and at the government level in Nigeria happened when like three ministries, Ministry of Finance, Ministry of Economy, and Ministry of Trade, like came together and really made impact on the economy. So that's for the economy. Are we able to do the same thing for food? Because food as a basic necessity, can we have trade, agriculture, and
Water
if it's
and energy.
finance? Yes, energy also, because energy is really key for especially for the inflation going to around 33-34% now in Nigeria, and the food inflation for last month, according to the National Bureau of Statistics, the inflation for food prices was around 40%. So that's really it's really huge. So if all these ministries and the private sector can come together, it will.
I think Mr. Gadibu, we're not able to hear you. Is it only me?
I think
No.
his connection is stuck.
Okay.
Yes.
So we mainly. So let's move to Mr. Ahmed until Mr. Gadibu's connection is restored. So Mr. Ahmed, what would you like to add for policies to improve or actions to improve food security?
Sure, very shortly, first and foremost, the governments have to reorient or repurpose their expenditures or the public finance that is deployed in the food security in form of subsidies, in form of public sector expenditure, public sector development in the agriculture and food security, so that it yield in a system that is more efficient, more inclusive, more sustainable, more resilient. That is the most important, because we do have a lot of expenditures, but they do not really meet this criteria. Secondly, the role of private sector needs to be mainstreamed. We cannot just say that the private sector is a partner, but if you look at the food security policies, often government thinks it as a knee-jerk reaction and does not really include private sector as part of the solution. Third, we need to enhance the role of trade and investment in ensuring food security. Fourth, to enhance the role of technology in improving the productivity and the supply chains and managing all of that. And then next, we should tap into the domestic or the regional resources, national or regional, as much as possible. And finally, to transform the diets and the dietary patterns, as colleagues have said, how do we consume and what do we consume? We do not need to have the same food 12 months a day, because our generations were alive without having that one. So we have to be a bit, let's say, responsible citizens and consumers, all of us. So these are the actions, I would say, in short, to ensure food security. Thank you.
Thank you. Sorry, Mr. Gadir, we had to move until you restore your connection. Please, if you have anything to add, please tell us.
Yeah. So the role of technology, as you rightly said, in reducing the post-harvest losses is very important. It's critical because across the value chain for specific crops, especially when those crops are in seasons, like fruit and vegetables, there's always a glut in the markets. And there's no government intervention like in the developed countries, where government could buy or government could intervene through a more advanced food banking model. Yeah, so in an African setting where this doesn't exist, then there's always problem of just wasting, contributing to climate change through methane emissions. So there's need for government to further recognize the role of food banking. In Africa, food banking is still like emerging, where we have maybe just 12 countries where food banking exists. Of course, in Nigeria we got 2, but at the same time, the role is still not well understood and is not well embedded in government policy, just like Hussein said that they are making a law to reduce food waste and also help grocery stores to recognize the role of food banking in reducing food waste and also enhancing food and nutritional security. So there's need to do this more. If government could connect with OIC as well as ICCD, as well as Global Food Banking Network, in order to make the role of food banking more pronounced and more intersectoral, then that will help to also enhance food security as well as reduce food waste and food loss. Yeah, thank you.
Thank you. I was checking the questions in the chat. We already answered, I believe, the first two. However, the third question is mainly focused on the production level. So we have a question asking about techniques to be used in order to improve food security at the production level, which is mainly the availability and the stability of food production or food supplies. Perhaps Mr. Ahmad, you can answer this part.
I can try, very shortly because it is a very big subject.
Definitely.
But certainly, I'll start with the use of technology and innovation rather, not just technology, because innovation can be very basic and with the basic technologies, and we need to improve the extension services, which in fact looks like simple but missing in loads and loads of countries. Then more importantly, we need to work on the R&D for the seeds or the varieties of seeds that are resilient to the climate change, because that is the most important part, and to the reduction of the water. And linked to that is the water management. We are not really good in using the very limited water, particularly in our region that we have. And then, to enhance the productivity overall at a farm level. So all in all, adopting the best practices and managing resources in a way that what we call as a climate smart agriculture practices, that would be, I think, the solution to enhance the production and the productivity as well. Thank you.
I'm not sure if there are other questions. Perhaps the responsible of the meeting or the creator of the meeting can you please let us know if there are other questions before concluding the webinar? No?
Hello, Ms. Sohaid, can you repeat, please? Sorry.
Okay, are there any other questions before concluding the webinar?
No, this is the questions of the attendees, those only.
Okay, thank you so much. Okay, so basically to wrap up, it's quite clear that achieving food security is definitely not an easy task, and it demands a comprehensive approach that addresses all components in parallel, from food availability to safety and waste reduction to food access and sustainability. It's clear from all interventions that collaboration among governments, private sector organizations, and communities are crucial to developing and implementing effective solutions. The role of technology is quite emphasized at both the production and consumption level, and there was quite an emphasis on consumption pattern and the need to adopt more sustainable consumption practices to reduce waste and to adopt more healthier and more sustainable diets. So I hope this webinar was enlightening to everyone, and I hope you all enjoyed it. And thank you all for your participation.
Thank you so much. Have a great afternoon.
Yeah, thank you.
You too.
So,
thank you.
ICCD. Yeah, bye.
Thank you so much for your participation. Thank you. It was a pleasure from us.
Thank you.
You're welcome. Thank you, Ms. Sohaid, a lot.